Isn't it wild how country borders can look so different on a map? From massive land to tiny dots, the variety is awesome. But what's really fascinating are those zigzags and curvy borders. You know, some epic stories led to those shapes. Ancient battles, geographic quirks, you name it. Let's check out some of them. Spain and Morocco. Let's zoom in on one of the most captivating border stories on the planet, Spain and Morocco. Now, when you think of Spain, you might picture it snugly tucked away in Europe, but it's got a wild card up its sleeve. It also owns a piece of Africa. This setup leads to some pretty fascinating and downright complex borders. First, we've got Panhandles de la Gomera. This isn't your average rock. It's a Spanish-owned outcrop right on the African coast. It's actually two rocks with a tiny sandy beach linking them to Morocco. The border here is a mere 80 meters wide, earning it the title of the world's shortest international border. It's like you could literally hop from Morocco to Spain in just a few giant steps if you were standing on that beach. Then there's Melilla, a vibrant Spanish city perched on the African coast. With a population of around 78,000, it's surrounded by Morocco. To keep things neatly separated, a 6-meter-high fence loops around the entire exclave. This fence acts as a divider, setting Melilla apart from the rest of Morocco. It's a vivid illustration of the unique and, at times, tense relationship between these two countries. Spain's foothold in Africa, with places like Melilla and Panhandles de la Gomera, is a sore spot for Morocco, which claims these territories. Despite the ongoing tug-of-war, these areas stand as crucial symbols of Spain's historical and strategic interests in the region. This blend of European and African geography is proof of how historical events have carved out modern borders, leading to some surprising and territorial changes. Melilla and Ceuta. It really is a head-scratcher, isn't it? Melilla and Ceuta. These two Spanish cities nestled in Africa aren't just a part of Spain, they're also a part of the European Union. That's right, they're using the euro as their currency, just like any other city in Spain or the rest of Europe. It's wild to think that they're the only spots where the EU physically touches the African continent. Melilla, with its community of 78,000 people, is encircled by a 6-meter-high fence that marks its boundary with Morocco. And there's Ceuta, a bit smaller with a population of 76,000, located up the coast and dealing with a similar setup. Both cities are this incredible fusion of European and African cultures, a unique blend you won't find anywhere else. But the story doesn't end there. Take a peek at the map and you'll see Spain, Morocco, and the United Kingdom all tangled up. And then there's Spain again, off the coast on an island called Ceuta. Yes, there's a city named Ceuta on an island named Ceuta, and it's all a part of Spain. This Spanish enclave is also wrapped in a 6-meter-high wall, but unlike Melilla, it doesn't have its own airport. So if you're dreaming of a trip from Ceuta to the mainland of Spain, you'll need to take a boat. Trieste, Italy. Alright, let's take a little trip to Italy, specifically the province of Trieste. This place is quite the character on the map because it stretches out for about 30 miles along the coast. This stretch actually extends beyond Italy and dips into Slovenia. Now, why does it look like this? Well, it's all thanks to history. Back in the day, this entire area was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But after World War I, Italy managed to snag a good chunk of land from the Austro-Hungarians. Fast forward to World War II, and under Mussolini's watch, Italy ended up losing a lot of that territory. In 1947, something pretty unique happened. Trieste became its independent city-state, with the United Nations keeping an eye on it. However, this independence was short-lived, because in 1954, the land that was once Trieste was split between Italy and Yugoslavia. The piece that Italy ended up with is what gives us that funky-looking border we see today. It's a reminder of how borders can change with the tides of history, leaving us with some pretty fascinating shapes on the map. Siliguri Corridor. Let's hop over to India now. India, for the most part, has a pretty straightforward shape on the map. But if you look closely, you'll notice this super narrow strip in the east that's just a bit odd. This is the Siliguri Corridor, and it's basically the lifeline connecting one part of India to the other. Now, the story behind this corridor is a bit of a wild ride. It all goes back to the colonial times, when India finally waved goodbye to British rule in 1947. The British decided to split the country into two, one part for the Hindus and the other for the Muslims. The Muslim part became Pakistan, which was actually split into two chunks: West Pakistan, what we know today as Pakistan, and East Pakistan, which later became Bangladesh. And guess what? These two parts of Pakistan were on opposite sides of India. So, in the northeast, you've got this tiny corridor, the Siliguri Corridor. That's the only thing connecting that part of India to the rest of the country. At its skinniest, it's just 17 miles wide. It's like a delicate thread holding everything together. To the north of this corridor, you've got the Indian state of Sikkim, which is nestled between Nepal and Bhutan. In this little corridor, it's the bridge for nearly 45 million people living in the northeastern states of India to the rest of their country. It's pretty mind-blowing that such a massive number of people are connected through this sliver of land that's barely 16.7 miles wide at its narrowest point. Interesting, isn't it? Wakhan Corridor. Let's take a little adventure up north to Afghanistan, where we'll find another one of those geographical quirks. We're talking about the Wakhan Corridor, a narrow strip of land that kinda sticks out like an appendix on the map of Afghanistan. This corridor stretches for about 220 miles from the main body of the country. And this thin sliver that gets as narrow as 8 miles and can be as wide as 40 miles at some points. Now, this corridor does something pretty unique. It creates a tiny little border between Afghanistan and China. And in doing so, it completely separates Tajikistan from Pakistan. At first, it might seem like one of those things that don't quite make sense. But if we take a step back in time, it all starts to come together. Way back in the 19th century, the Russian and British empires were in this big tug of war over territory in the region. Russia had control over Central Asia, and Britain was ruling in India. They both wanted to keep each other at arm's length, so they struck a deal to recognize Afghanistan as an independent country. This way, Afghanistan would act as a buffer zone, keeping the two empires from bumping into each other. But when they drew the lines on the map, they realized there was a bit of a gap, so they extended Afghanistan by 211 miles to the east to fill it in. Fast forward to today, and the Wakhan Corridor is still there, doing its job at the border between Tajikistan and Pakistan. It reminds us how the decisions made by empires long ago can still have a tangible impact on the world map today. It's like a living, breathing piece of history right there on the ground. Congo. Let's go into the heart of Africa, where the Democratic Republic of the Congo flaunts multiple geographical quirks. First up, there's Congo Central. The Belgians' VIP access route into their massive colonial territory from the ocean. But then there's the Congo Pedestal, an elongated strip of land that pokes into Zambia for about 124 miles. This strip is a real shapeshifter, narrowing and widening between 40 to 62 miles. And the backstory? It's a wild ride. Imagine the scene. The Congo under Belgian rule and Zambia under British control. These two colonial powers couldn't agree on where to draw the line. They called in the King of Italy. With limited knowledge of African geography, he grabbed a pen and drew a line on the map. And just like that, both sides were content. Isn't it crazy how borders can be born from a mix of diplomatic deal-making, and a dash of geographical cluelessness? Now, let's swing over to Namibia, where the Caprivi Strip steals the show. This strip is like a long, reaching arm, stretching 280 miles away from the rest of Namibia. It's a story straight out of the colonial era, back when Namibia was a German colony between 1884 and 1915. Chancellor Leo von Caprivi was on a mission to connect Namibia to the Zambezi River. Why? Because Germany wanted a water highway to the east coast of Africa. In a swap with Britain, Germany gave up its claim to Zanzibar and claimed the Caprivi Strip instead. This strip pays no heed to ethnic or linguistic boundaries. It slices right through them. The result? Botswana is almost entirely blocked from Zambia, with only a sliver of a connection on the Zambezi River. Namibia, on the other hand, is practically knocking on Zimbabwe's door, just 200 meters away down the river. It's a wild reminder of how colonial decisions have sculpted the face of the world map for generations to come. Perigil Islands. Just a stone's throw from Melilla, there's this tiny, uninhabited island called Perigil. You wouldn't think to look at it, but this little island has a history that's anything but dull. Despite its modest size and the fact that it's devoid of any permanent residents, Isle Perigil found itself in the middle of an international crisis in 2002. That year, 12 Moroccan soldiers made a surprise landing on the island and raised the Moroccan flag, staking their country's claim to the land. This move set off a diplomatic firestorm, with the Arab League throwing its weight behind Morocco's claim, while NATO and the European Union stood firmly in Spain's corner. Warships circled the island, leading up the tension to a breaking point. Spain wasn't about to back down though. They launched a counterattack, sending in commandos who swiftly took control of the island and detained the Moroccan soldiers. Since then, both Spain and Morocco have come to an understanding, agreeing to treat Isle Perigil as a no-man's land. It's off limits to everyone, a silent sentinel in the sea. This strange chapter in history is a stark reminder that even the most insignificant seeming plots of land can ignite fierce battles in international relations. Peanut Hole. Imagine a spot in the Sea of Okhotsk that's shaped like a peanut and surrounded by Russian waters on all sides. This odd little area, known as the Peanut Hole, just barely sits outside Russia's 200-mile exclusive economic zone. In the 1990s, this unique quirk of geography became a hotspot for overfishing. Foreign countries saw an opportunity and rushed to exploit it. First on the scene were 39 Polish super trawlers, quickly followed by the entire Chinese commercial fishing fleet. With no fear of legal consequences, these fleets swarmed the Peanut Hole, drastically depleting fish stocks. Fish, of course, don't recognize human-made borders. The non-Russian fleets took full advantage of this, scooping up as many fish as they could without worrying about the impact on their own waters. Russia, understandably upset by this plundering, asked the United Nations for help. They wanted a way to extend their jurisdiction beyond the 200-mile limit, arguing that the Peanut Hole was part of their continental shelf. Bolivia. Since 1659, a certain island has been ping-ponged between Spain and France over 700 times, and the saga is still going strong. But that's not the only twist from the 1659 treaty. Head a bit north in France and you'll find a tiny piece of Spain surrounded by French land. This spot is called Bolivia. When the treaty passed the surrounding lands to France, they decided Bolivia was too special to let go, so it got to stay Spanish. Things have pretty much stayed the same since then. Bolivia is linked to the rest of Spain by a narrow path that cuts through French territory. It's a quirky geographical oddity that shows how complex European borders can be. The world is full of more of these cool and curious borders, each with its own amazing story. Which one is your favorite story? Let us know in the comments section below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more engaging content. Until next time.